W-2 versus entrepreneurship. What's a W-2? W-2 employee, right? It's a tax designation, really. Think about it. It's a designation that you can claim each year. Typically, you're an employee of a employer of a business, and that's how we both started out, right? I mean, my very first job was at Bill's IGA grocery store in Carthage, Illinois. I was a W-2 employee.
Mm-hmm.
Learned a lot of good lessons. Had a lot of food fights in the back of the grocery store.
Wasting food.
Yeah, and we're talking about this today because I think there's like this allure around being an entrepreneur, owning your own business, and I could certainly there can be, right, but it's tough, man. Like it's tough building something, especially from scratch. If you didn't inherit something or buy a turnkey business, like entrepreneurship is really hard. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean,
it's probably why we don't have as much hair as we'd like.
It's true.
36 years old, we're losing our hair.
I'm 37 now.
Barely, right?
Yeah, last week. So, but let's talk about this because it's a real conversation. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I mean, this is 2024. I think we both have seen some like tremendous growth in our businesses. We're both in different things, but that didn't come free.
Mm-hmm.
There was a cost to that, and we willingly gave that cost. Like it's not something, nobody had a gun to our heads to make us do this. We wanted to do this, but I'm not gonna lie, there are days when it's like, man, it would be nice to be a W-2 employee and be able to go home and just shut off, because we need W-2 employees. They're extremely valuable and important. But let's talk about this because this is there's a lot more going on here than just dollars and cents, right?
Yeah, I think, he's talking W-2 employee, like you work for somebody else, right? And there's always this idea like, oh, work for them and make them rich, or maybe I should go start my own business. And to that, I would say, if you got the calling to go start something that you're passionate about, go ahead. But it is 3 to 5 years of a grind that you're probably going to make less than you did as a W-2 employee. So don't just do it for the money. But you also have the potential to make more, I think.
100%.
But we have clients that are W-2 making $500,000, $1 million a year. Like, that sounds pretty dang good too. And they don't have to carry the liability. They don't have to worry about hiring and firing. They don't have to do, the hardest thing I think I've had to do is manage people.
Yeah, I agree.
And some people are better at it. I'm obviously not the best at it. I don't know. That's been the hardest thing. Like for me as like a solopreneur, when it was just me out grinding, making money, I did okay. I enjoyed that. It was stressful as well. But when you're like, okay, now I want to free up my time. Well, as the boss, to free up your time, that means you have to hire people.
Yeah.
Right? That means you have to build a system that...
Hire the right people.
Yeah, and I'm just saying though, but like as a W-2 employee, if you want to free up time, that's really not an option either. You just gotta negotiate with your boss to how much time you can have off.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking a little bit all over, but there's pros and cons to both.
I think a lot of times there's this conception too, like starting your own business, that there's more risk with it. Maybe, but I also would argue that there's a certain amount of risk too as being an employee where you don't have as much control over your job. Now, yeah, if you're extremely valuable to that company, you're probably going to be okay for the most part. But talk about that, because that was something that was difficult for me to kind of. I eventually just had to burn the ships because I had 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and it was difficult to be good in either one. And part of it was like, man, if I don't make any money for the next 3 months or 6 months, like I'm in trouble. And there was that risk in the back of my head that said, well, wait a minute, like this is really risky. And I had everybody around me telling me that, Riley, what are you doing? Like you were a physical therapist, now you're going to be a financial guy? Like what's going on? Are you okay? Do you need a therapist? So talk about the risk component.
I think you got to be kind of crazy. Right? You just gotta, like if you are too risk averse, like none of us want to lose money when we think risk, but if you're too scared, like it's gonna be a rough go, man. You gotta have a little crazy in you to just be like, I'm okay with that. Like, I think for me, the question I always ask myself is, if it didn't work and I had to go get a job, okay. I mean, think of how many people have a W-2 job and they get told they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, their world's turned upside down for, a few weeks, and then they go apply for new jobs and they start over.
Apply for Cobra, apply for...
I mean, we can do that too,
Yeah.
I'm probably not overly employable, but I can go get a job somewhere.
I wouldn't hire you.
Yeah, I could go get a job if it failed, right?
Yeah.
But I think that was and then we get the perspective of being in the financial space. And it's like, these people grind for 30 years for a company, not as common anymore, but the end result is not super glamorous either.
No.
So it's like, I don't know, I guess if you're younger or middle age or whatever, and you're hearing this and you got that burning desire inside to go start something, don't rule it out. Like, don't get too scared from what we're talking about. Like, Go ahead and go try, but maybe build something up on the side as you keep your W-2 job for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then test the waters and definitely find out who your circle is. Like, if you are hanging around all the people over here that don't own any businesses or have unsuccessful businesses and they're going to try to build something big, you have to get your circle over here to help you through, like, building a business, I would just say. So
What's the lowest your bank account's ever been?
is negative like a legit number?
Is it an option? Yeah.
Upside down?
Yeah.
Multiple times?
$138. I remember, I forget what the year was exactly, but it wasn't a decade ago. It wasn't that long ago. I remember I had rent due like the next week, and I think this was at the beginning of COVID actually, because everybody that all of my cases, all my financial clients were like, I'm not doing anything right now because I don't know everything was shutting down, right? And I remember looking at my checking account had $138, and I had my whole life insurance policies. I still had some cash. I didn't want to read them though, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking to myself, what am I going to do? And I didn't have a kid at that point. I had a wife to support. At that time, she was working inside the home, not outside the home. And I remember that I actually took a screenshot of my bank account online, and I still have it saved in my laptop because I never want to forget that. And I did not, I've had a pretty easy life financially. I'm not saying that for any other reason than there were some really hard days and scary, and I had to use a credit card, and you build and you grow, and I learned more from those days than I think I have in my best days.
Yeah, it definitely makes you resilient.
Yeah.
I mean, either quit or you keep moving.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I remember just a couple quick stories here. The week before our wedding, I remember I had a case close and I made like $25,000, and I was ecstatic because the payment for like the venue and everything else was coming up, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I mean, I had just barely enough, but then there was nothing left to go do something with to start our marriage off with, and I had a case close. Like on the Monday, we got married on a Saturday. We got paid, whatever, I think it was the Thursday before, so the week before. And it was just such a huge relief. Like, that's one part that I wasn't prepared for, like the ups and downs, like the emotional roller coaster of looking at your bank account. And it's nice to know every 2 weeks that you're gonna get a paycheck, right? Like that, there's a psychology to that
Right.
that gets comfortable.
Or just get paid for your time.
Exactly, right, yeah.
So maybe just breaking that down, like, as the boss or the entrepreneur, you don't get paid for your time, right? Like, if your time's not productive and you're not providing a valuable service for somebody,
You don't make money.
You don't make any money, so,
And I can only imagine, like, I had to support a wife, and I'm still supporting a wife and now one kid. You got 8 kids. Like, that's not easy to do. And I'm not trying to compare anything, but there's a lot of resiliency that has to come from when you start to have kids in this world too. And but I also think that's why you are hustling the way that you are, the way you have, is you got a job to do, man. Like, we were meant to be husbands and fathers because we are, and that there's a reason that you've had 8 kids, 9, 10, however many you and Lee are gonna have. But I'm grateful for like the fire that my kid gives me, my wife gives me, to make me go hustle. You know, so I'm kind of all over the place, but
yeah, I mean, kind of just back to W-2. It's not. I think for a while when you first get into entrepreneurship, you're like, you get this fire and passion, and you're like, everybody should do this. I don't think everybody should do this. I really don't. I think if you're, you know, if you find a good job that gives you passion, and it gives you some time off, and it gives you your nights off, and you can be with your family, like, that's cool. I think the ultimate goal is, what do you need to set yourself up for to become the best person, right? The best husband, the best dad, the best, you know, father or Christian or whatever. Like, and sometimes being an entrepreneur probably would make you a worse person.
Yeah. Because
you're constantly stressed, you're not sleeping like you should, you're not eating like you should, you don't have time for working out, you're working too much. Like, so I mean, if you're not the right person, you know, that can handle entrepreneurship, it might make you a worse person.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've seen that. You know?
I have too. Yeah.
And so don't let the like sexiness of being your own boss like think you have to do it, but at the same time, you know, you kind of know inside of you maybe you're not destined to work for somebody else forever either.
Yeah.
So don't like rule out maybe starting a side business, you know, in addition to your W-2 job.
Pause, we could look and see if it's still going strong. Still recording? It's not? Seriously? Surely not. Let me see it.
I think it might be.
Let me see it.
It says 13 minutes. We have
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we're good. Okay, yeah. Put that sucker back on. Let me see the...
Should we stop it and start over?
We can pause it for a second.
Or whatever.
No, she can edit this out. So let's put that back where it was. I just want to make sure it wasn't... I'm still at 22%, so... Good?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk about integrator.
About what?
So I think one of the things, just to your point there, there are so many business owners, employers, that would love to have just a quality human being in their organization that can help them not only get to the next level for themselves, but, you know, share that wealth with the other people in the organization. So like, we kind of call that like an integrator, right? There's a system out there called Traction EOS, an entrepreneurship operating system. And they talk about, you know, there's different types of people. One of them is an integrator, which really helps the implementation of all the things. There's the idea person. What's the name for them?
Visionary.
Visionary. I would categorize Dan as more of a visionary. Not that he can't be an integrator. I think he's got, if he had to grind to be an integrator, he could, but it would be a little harder for you to be an integrator than as opposed to a visionary. I'm probably more of an integrator. I think I am a visionary in some aspects. I have some ideas or thoughts, but I heard a quote today. I'm reading a book, and it was on a podcast maybe. It said strategies and ideas are cheap. The money and the real value comes from implementation, right? And I think that's really, if I had to sum up entrepreneurship, it's what I've learned in building some businesses. It's implementation is really difficult. It's hard getting systems and processes, and not everybody has the backbone to do that either, or to realize that maybe Dan can't do that. He needs to get somebody else involved, like we have in our organization.
Well, case in point, we've had our own practice for 6-7 years individually.
Yep.
And the last year we're like, let's merge.
Yep.
And it hasn't been like, it hasn't been as easy as we thought. It's not like 1 + 1 is 2. It's more like 1 + 1 is 1.2. but it has the potential to be
4.
6,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we're shooting for. But without systems, it's not.
1 + 1 is 1.2. That's good. I haven't thought about that before.
I mean, let's be honest. We're 90 days in. We're on our second 90-day trial of merging.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this and you're watching this on the 5F Facebook page, like the 5F was created when we merged, and we're committed. We like each other, you know, and we have a lot of, you know, synergies. But now we got Katie and we got Jana and we got like employees and we got. You know, it can't be a 1 + 1 = 2. Otherwise, stay 1 + 1, right? But, you know, back to your point with the integrator and the systems and the processes, it's like you gotta almost take a step back, you know, and give yourself a little time to build those systems out. I think maybe we underestimated.
Yeah, slow down to speed up. Right?
Yeah.
And you know, shiny objects. That's the next thing that comes into my head. It's very easy to get distracted with a new software or a new tool or a new product that you think that they promise it's going to take you to the next level, and it might, maybe it does. There are some awesome tools out there. At the same time, though, like consistency. Like I don't know how. Like if there was one word that I had to use to sum up, if you're consistent really in anything in life, you're probably going to be okay. And that's hard to do, whether it's marking out, honoring your schedule, honoring your time, time with your family, your spouse, whoever it is. Like that's been one of the more challenging things for me. And again, being a W-2, because we both were that as well, it's like that wasn't as difficult, it didn't seem back in the day, as it is now.
But think about it. The reason it wasn't difficult is the boss built the system.
Right.
Right? If they had multiple employees, they had to build the system. You came in and they gave you the framework and you just follow this framework and then go home at night. Whereas we're like from the top trying to build the system, and it's like if you don't build the system, you don't keep good employees because they get frustrated. You don't grow, you don't make enough money, and and that's why 95% of businesses fail.
I was just gonna ask you, what's the stat in the first 5 years? How many businesses?
9 out of 10, and then the next 5, it's another 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
So over 10 years, 95% of businesses fail.
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay. I mean, that makes you not want to, but for me, it's like, well, let's just try to make it 10 years then, right? and
or start 10 businesses.
Or start 10 businesses, which I think we're doing
on our
both.
way.
We're doing both, right?
Yeah.
This first business, though, technically is 7 years old.
Yeah.
And then our merging is not even a year old, but but we're not. I don't count that as a restart. I just count it as, your business, my business, merging into the same thing.
It's morphing. It's adapting. One of the things that attracted me to entrepreneurship was a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and even another book called Cash Flow Quadrant, and talking about that there's 4 quadrants, right? There's on the left upper quadrant, there's E for employee. Lower left corner is S for self-employed. Upper right corner is B for business owner. That could be like Amazon, Jeff Bezos, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. And then the lower right corner is investor. And really on the left side of the quadrant, the employee and the self-employed, that's W-2 employee or like a high-earning dentist or a doctor or self-employed. They're making a lot of money potentially, but they're also paying a lot in taxes. They're on a financial treadmill that it's really difficult to get off of. On the right-hand side, they could pay potentially legally and ethically 0% in taxes because they have deductions or expenses they can use to offset that gross income or that revenue. So that was one of the first things. Like, well, man, if I can find a way to get more time with the people that I care about and the things that I want to do, I'm in. And the rude awakening was for the first 3 to 5 years of Spain, even more now. It's like, man, I actually think I have less time because I've allowed more to come on my plate than probably what I should at times. And I hate over-promising and under-delivering. I hate showing up 5 minutes late to a meeting or to something that's important. My wife, wants me to be home by this time for really good reasons, and it's never done intentionally or maliciously, but stuff comes up. And so then it's like, well, is your work more important than me? Like, no, it's not at all, but that's difficult to manage all that. And I don't know how you feel about this next statement, but I don't know that I believe in a perfect work-life balance. I don't think that there is a balance. I think you need to be present and committed to whatever you're in at that moment, and give it all that you can. But it's a lot of stuff there. But there was this dream and this allure of, you're going to have all this time, and someday that will happen. And there has been moments when I've been able to take a month off when my kid was born. I've been able to travel and do things, but I wouldn't have been able to do as a W-2 for some of the pros. But it's been a crazy journey. I feel like I'm just getting started. I still have some hair left, so I feel like there's still room to grow. Pardon the pun.
I was going to say lots of room to grow.
But I'd do it again. Like
Yeah.
that was going to be the next question for you, is would you do it again?
Yeah. I mean, you've hit on a lot in that last 5 minutes there.
18 and a half minutes.
And I mean, let's unpack a couple. You talked about balance.
Yeah.
And you were gonna ask me a question, but then you kept talking.
No.
So balance, like, I don't know. I think, there might be a week where you have to work 80 hours.
Yeah.
But I think the balance part comes in realizing, like, you probably shouldn't do that for 12 weeks in a row, right? It's not going to be good for your health. It's not going to be good for your family. So the balance might come later, but in that moment, to have a perfect balanced day every day where you work 6 hours and you're home 6 hours, like, I don't know if that exists until you get your systems in place, right? Like when you're building, you might have to work 20 hours a few of those days. Like it can be pretty wild. You get up at 4 and you burn it till midnight. Like we've all done that, building a business. So I think but I do believe in balance as far as, like, you should devote time for your faith. You should devote time to your family. You should devote time to your health and your fitness. You should devote time to building your finances. Throw back to the 4 F's, which will lead to the 5th F, is freedom, right? And if you can, balance out what's important in your life, that's the more important balance, not so much like the perfect schedule every single day, because sometimes you might have to devote a little more to one of those F's.
Right.
Another thing you said was the quadrants, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was important for the conversation of W-2 and self-employed or business owner entrepreneurship. Is you should read that book if you haven't, Cash Flow Quadrant, if you're a reader, but you should strive to be on the right side of the column somehow. Meaning, if you're going to stay in the employee box as a W-2, that means work to get your income up as high as possible, save, and then take your savings and go right to the investor bucket and try to create time by creating assets that pay you. Right?
Make
and
money when you sleep.
if this doesn't make sense, like, read that book. But I found that if you migrate down to the self-employed bucket, then you really need to be pouring your efforts into learning the B. And I would almost argue learn the B before you go to the I in that case.
Agreed.
Because you want to get yourself out of the business that you started. And you only do that by creating systems to become an actual business owner, right? The left side of the quadrant, you're always going to be stuck trading time for money. The right side of the quadrant, you're going to learn to create money without your time. Right, you can money while you sleep type of thing, whether the business has a system that pays you or the investment has cash flow that doesn't need you there. So I thought those are important and very relevant to the W-2 versus the entrepreneurship. It's like, there's no perfect way to do that, but if you're going to stay in the W-2 world, take your hard-earned earnings, skip the self-employed, skip the business, and go right to I. There's 1,000 ways to do it. Like, if you want to go from E to S to B to I, great, that's fine. But if you got a good high income earning job and you like it and it gives you the lifestyle you want, great. Don't feel the need to go struggle into the entrepreneurship world.
No.
So, yeah.
Phases of life too, right? Like, I'm grateful that I was given the ability or the time to start this when I wasn't married and I didn't have a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mindset definitely would have been different.
I've seen that's where I was just crazy the whole time, right? I had two
You
kids
were?
in college.
I'm serious. Yeah.
Went into this.
It's nuts.
Went into a W-2, and then started multiple businesses after I quit the W-2 job.
I'm not asking for you to share anything personal.
Go ahead.
But
Let her rip.
has that been challenging in your marriage at times?
I don't think the actual money part was too challenging. I think, because I've always just, like when I was leaving physical therapy, it wasn't like, hey, I don't like physical therapy. I'm not gonna do this and I'm gonna do something else. Oh, let's go figure out. No, it was, I had a physical therapist job. I had a part-time physical therapy job. I was putting that, like, post on Craigslist that I could go do your suspended ceilings in your basement. I was picking up hours with my buddy. Like, I had like 6 jobs at one point. I don't think people understand. Like, I was going to keep food on the table.
Yeah.
And then I got interested in finances, and that was, you remember how rocky of a road that was, but it excited me. I'm like, wow, I'm learning about money. I'm learning about business in a different way. I'm getting a different impact, And so as that grew, then I'm like, oh, I don't have to do any more construction jobs. Cool. I can get some weekends back. And then as that grew some more, it's like, oh, I don't need this second PT job. Cool. And then as it grew some more, I'm like, hey, I'm going to take the second PT job back. I'm going to quit my full-time PT job.
Yeah.
And then finally, after like 2 years, I quit PT. Right? So I mean, to answer your question, it was always like, the marriage part was, she's probably just like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, I have no clue. Like,
She's still like that.
She's still like that. I mean, now it's like, I was just talking to someone on the drive down today, and I was like, I feel like I was a little more simple and clear on where I wanted to go like 2 years ago. Just being honest. Fast forward right to today, it's like now I got like 4 things again. And I'm like, and in my head I'm telling me they're all synergistic and they're all heading in the same direction, but at the same time it's like I'm getting pulled. So, hence one of the main reasons I came down was for this conference I'm heading to. And I hired a new coach, and I'm just like, hey, I want to get clarity again on where we're going. How do we pull all these back together? How do we create systems to remove myself and get mentally clear again on what the next phase of my life is?
Yeah. It's a season of growth again, right? I've said this 100 times on previous episodes, but one of my favorite pictures that I've ever seen in my life, I actually took. But it was a picture.
That's a little.
I know. Conceited, right?
Yeah.
I know. I need to knock it down a little
Yeah.
bit. But we were in Colorado. My wife and I were in Colorado. She was kneeling down. We were at the top of a mountain range, basically. And I'm taking a picture of her, taking a picture with her camera. The sun's like shining through. It's a beautiful picture. Awesome. And I noticed something like at the top of the peaks, like there's not much life. There's not much. It's cold. It's snow up there. Not much oxygen. Like there's not much moving around, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the valleys, it's a lot of growth. There's a lot of vegetation, and there's life, right? There's oxygen, and that's to me that's indicative of life. Like we grow a lot more in the valleys. Like you're probably in a bit of a valley right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. Like I'm not that excited. Like find more valleys. That's kind of a motto that I have. Like let's go find some more valleys,
Mm-hmm.
and getting the hands dirty, because that's what leads into my next question to you. Is there a quick path? You were telling me a story tonight about a guy in his first year in a new job made $500,000 in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of come tumbling down. But Mike, is there a teeter-totter? Like, can you do it really fast, or does it take 3 to 5 years?
I don't want to act like, I don't want to act like I got all the answers by any means,
Yeah.
but in interviewing lots of people, talking to lots of people, like, quick money usually doesn't stay around. That's, if there's a one-liner for you, and maybe you're like, well, you're an idiot, you don't know anything. Well, okay, if you're made money really fast in the last 3 years and you're telling me I'm an idiot, then okay, well, you're still, like, hang on. I'd be learning, like, how to keep what you got, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my advice is changing a little bit as I've been through, we're heading into 8 years of business. So it's like, there is something to be said about slow and steady and predictable and systems and maybe create checkpoints as you grow. Like, cool, we had a really good week. We had a really good month. Like, congratulate yourself, what worked, and then reinforce what worked. Just constantly reinforcing what worked. But if you're exploded really fast, that comes with a lot of growing pains, and that's good. But if you don't recognize the growing pains, I feel like you can't just mask that stuff and just like, oh, cool, we're printing money. It's gonna come crashing down if you don't kind of peel the layers back a little bit. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but that's been my experience.
Mine too.
From myself and from a lot of people. When it comes really easy, be grateful for it. Thank you, Jesus. But fast money doesn't seem to stick around very long, in my experience.
Yeah. That's when I had a new client. This is a couple months ago, and I should say it's a new prospect, not a client, because their business exploded. They went from making like $100,000 a year to like 400, and great, it's awesome. And then they said in their intake form that they were saving. I think it was like, what was it? It's like 10 grand a month. I mean, it was like so 120 grand a year. And so then the next question was, how much money do you have in your savings account? And it was like $2,000.
Right.
So you're saving 10 grand a month, but you're spending the rest. Like you're spending 98% of it.
Right.
And
Well, we see that with our clients all the time. It's like, I got 10 grand a month to set aside.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. How long you been saving that? Oh, pretty good. It's
6 months, a year. Whatever.
6 months, a year. Well, okay, math says that you should have 10 grand times 6 months to a year set aside, and then you check and they got 5 grand. And it's like,
right. What's going on here?
Kind of check the books and be able to kind of prove, I guess, what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And we're preaching to ourselves too. It's like,
100%.
It's not a knock on people, but
it's easy to get in that rut. And I'm not just talking about money, but like, you are your environment, right? And that's just, I don't care if you to go back to our original topic, W-2 versus entrepreneurship or as a business owner. It's like, you've heard this story from a coach of ours, Tommy Schaff. He says there's this little 5-year-old girl, and it's Christmas time, so all her family's over for their Christmas dinner, right? You know where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she's really observant. She's 5 years old. She asks a ton of questions, and she's in the kitchen. She's watching her mom. She notices her mom cuts off the end of the ham before she puts it in the pan.
Oh yeah, I saw
before
this
she
one.
puts it in the oven.
Yeah.
And little girl says, "Mom, why do you cut off the end of the ham before you put it in the pan before you put it in the oven?" Her mom just kind of stands there, and she's like, "I don't know. That's what my mom always said. Why don't you go into the room and ask Grandma?" Pitter patter, pitter patter. She goes in the room and asks her grandma, "Why did you always cut off the end of the ham before you put it in the pan before you put it in the oven?" And her grandma kind of chuckles, and she's like, I don't know. That's what my mom always did. Go ask great grandma in the room. Healthiest family in America, apparently. So she goes in the room, pitter patter, and she's like, "Great grandma, why did you always cut off the end of the ham before you put it in the pan, before you put it in the oven?" And her great grandma laughs, and she's like, "I didn't have a big enough pan." 3 generations, 4, going on 4. Like, it just, money is no different. Our environment's no different. Our W-2 job, that's why it's so important to surround yourself with good people that you want to have similar values and morals. And I heard something just the other day, in the last comment. I was watching a short snippet of Joe Rogan, and he had some doctor or some person that wrote a book on depression, and they were talking about how the number one symptom or number one cause of depression is focusing on your problems all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So something went wrong, and that's all you talk about. And then you go to a therapist to help you out with this, and what do you do there? You focus on your problems all the time, and they kind of let you indulge in it a little bit. I'm not saying you shouldn't be aware of what's going on. That's not what I'm saying. But thinking either in a box that's bigger than what you're used to, or thinking outside the box, can be a really healthy exercise to do, right? And writing things down, targets, goals, all those things. And I've noticed that being, I guess I'll call myself an entrepreneur, like, I do those things more as opposed to when I was a W-2. I'm thinking bigger now that I'm over here as opposed to when I was a W-2. That's not always true for everybody, but that was true for me. And that's one of the things that I think I appreciate most, is that I think differently. And I'm grateful for that.
I mean, just W-2 in general, if I had to pick on the problems of maybe that could come with being a W-2 is you get comfortable, right? So if you're in a role where you're not being pushed to learn and to challenge yourselves, I mean, aside from the money, like hopefully you're making enough to pay your bills and you like it, but you don't want to stay in the environment too long, because I don't think God created us to just kind of get comfortable. We're supposed to be challenging our brains, our skills. We're supposed to be increasing our skill level. And there are hopefully W-2 positions that, you know, allow you to do that. But a lot of times what I found is if you're at the same job for a really long time, you've kind of given up on the growth thing. So to your point, I mean, obviously if they're listening to our videos and podcast stuff, they're probably hopefully trying to learn. But if you're never writing out goals and you're never reading entrepreneurship books and you're not reading like growth books, and you know, you're probably in a position where you're not pushing yourself very hard, which I think is one of the biggest issues with W-2, you know. So as employers, you know, and as having employees, I think it's important we always make sure we're not capping our people. We're giving them opportunities for growth. We're putting them in environments to learn. You know, we're encouraging seminars and I don't know. I mean, that's my thoughts. We want to be the employer that allows unlimited growth and opportunities and challenges for our employees. Right. And I think they'll stay around longer too, 100%. Especially if you can pay them well too. Yeah. You know, match the pay with the opportunity.
And skills, yeah. Good stuff, man. A little bit of a longer
all
episode.
Over.
Yeah, all over, but it's good. I think to go back to, I maybe put a bow on it, you know, W-2 versus entrepreneurship or business, like we need both. You don't have the business owners without the W-2s. Yeah. And you don't have the W-2s without the business owners. So very synergistic, they have to be. I think really look at your DNA, you know, we call it your investor DNA, or maybe even just your mindset DNA. It's like, who are you? And I think to know thyself, Socrates said that, whoever said it, somebody smart in the past.
Well, even taking it a step further, if you really want to do that, look up like personality tests. There's like personality index or DISC assessments. There's, I mean, Google will probably find you some free assessments, but you want to find out, you know, a little bit about your personality, and it might match you up, you know. Right. When I do those tests, it says I'm probably not going to be a good employee. Yeah. I'm very much like on to the next thing. I like thinking about ideas. I like solving problems. You know, I like talking to people. I don't like details. I'm not very good with, you know, some of the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Yeah. But to your point, if I could pair myself up with someone that is really good at all the things I suck at, like, wow, that's a nice package that can provide really good service and for people. Mm-hmm. But if me on my own, I'm always going to be handicapped as to my weaknesses. Right. You know? Yeah. So if you're out there and you're listening to this, you're like, how do I know if I should start a business? Like, maybe that's a starting point. You know, do you have the interest? Do you have the passion? Do you have like something you want to go for? But then on top of it, do like a little personality assessment and find out maybe, you know, the best way you can go about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff, man. Let us know if you have any questions. We'd be happy to share more of our personal story. If it provides any kind of value at all, let us help you.